At the onset of the pandemic, our arts and culture entities were among the first to close and among the last to reopen. Our sector feels a little wobbly and precarious. But those of us who work in the field, we know that, and this is not a talk for them. This is a talk for everyone else, for those who value the arts in a more theoretical way. During the shutdown, there was a pause, an opportunity to reevaluate and reassess around some of our biggest questions. 1, is it possible to reverse a decades-long trend of declining attendance at traditional arts activities? And 2, is it possible to change the narrative about who the arts are for and what the arts are good for? Since the 1950s, much of our sector has been dependent upon philanthropy and major donors for anywhere from 30 to 70% of our operating budgets. And the result is an ecosystem that has been designed primarily for those donors. I'm going to suggest that the answer to these questions are 1, maybe not. Not unless we reconceive what a traditional arts experience is and find new places and new ways to connect with our communities. And 2, yes, absolutely. But we need help from outside of our field to do so. I've had the opportunity to attend a couple of professional convenings in the last few months of creatives and other arts leaders, and the fear I hear articulated most frequently is, I hope we don't go back to business as usual. Because business as usual is an existential threat to the creative lives of our communities. And here's why. Some context is needed to understand the arts ecosystem pre-pandemic. The U.S. relies on a major study to measure Americans' participation in the arts. It's called Survey of Public Participation in the Arts, and it's published by the National Endowment for the Arts with data collection going back to 1982. One of the tentpole areas that the survey measures is attendance. And between 1982 and 2012, the data for attendance is measured for benchmark activities. And these benchmark activities are defined as jazz, opera, classical music, musicals, non-musical plays, museums, and galleries. And the data for those years looks like this. A peak in 1992, with a gradual decline every 5 years for the following 20 years, for a total loss of 7.5% attendance. By the time 2017's SPPA is published in early 2020, there's been a seismic shift in the way artists and arts organizations are talking about their impact on audiences and attendees. We're not just measuring feet through doors and butts in seats, but we're in a deep conversation about audience engagement, and the reason is our opportunity to gain market share and avoid a financially precarious future is to convert millennials into arts consumers. But there's a problem. Arts education has been on a decline in our school for the decades leading up to 2012. So this new generation does not have a relationship with the traditional arts baked into their education, and the digital world is beginning to change the way they think about creativity and entertainment. Research keeps coming in that this generation does not want to be a passive observer. They want to be active participants. And we're wrestling with this model published in 2012 by Wolf Brown, a research firm dedicated to measuring and interpreting the arts and culture sector. And the model is asking us to not consider singularly audience, but community. Not passive, but active. Not expert-led, but peer-led. Not solitary, but social. Not just this, but this. and this, and this. Well, who and what are we if we are not the experts in artistic excellence and the arbiters of taste? And this leaves us in quite a conundrum because while this new generation may have dramatically different expectations of their arts experiences, seeking community and participation, our economic model is based on the donations of previous generations who have come to expect and prefer a quiet and reverential traditional arts experience. And this brings me back to that 2017 SPPA, because that year the data is recontextualized and refocused. In addition to measuring those benchmark activities, the definition of activities is broadened, and the story begins to get much rosier. They lead with the data point that 54% of Americans have attended an arts activity. They've broadened the definition to include fairs and festivals, and notably outdoor festivals where the arts are included as a component of many other activities. And why do we need to pay special attention to these fairs and festivals? Because they are active, not passive, because they emphasize community over audience, because attendees can guide their own experience. They are peer-led versus expert-led. We will have a new SPPA in the near future for 2022 data. And I'm going to be prepared for the data around traditional benchmark activities to be pretty grim. We have a real-time touchstone to reference from our friends at Wolf Brown. They launched the Audience Outlook Monitor shortly after the shutdown, and it was meant to be a tool for arts and cultural organizations to determine how and when to resume programming coming out of COVID. The study was concluded this past June, and one of the key takeaways is 15 to 20% long-term non-returners. They are telling us that they're not coming back. And the theories around why this is the case are heartbreaking. Our patrons were without us for 2 years, and they decided that they could find meaningful experiences outside of our traditional venues, and they simply weren't coming back. But I am not pessimistic about the place of arts and culture in our future. 2017's SPPA notes that there is something ahead for us. If we are willing to get out of our buildings and listen deeply to our communities, this is a moment to double down and cry from the rooftops that the arts are a secret weapon against so many of the challenges we are currently facing in our society. If you look at our stickiest problems, a crisis of mental and physical wellness, communities divided, changing demographics, luring some towards fear and anger and away from empathy and kindness. A digital revolution happening so quickly we literally can't keep up with the consequences and implications. Museums and theaters and concert halls as non-pharmaceutical treatments for anxiety and depression. Music for cardiovascular health. The arts as a stimulus for economic development. Theater for unity. The arts for unity. Many bristle against the fact that we have to make this case. They say, what's wrong with arts for art's sake? And the answer is, of course, nothing, absolutely nothing. Sharing the talents and gifts of talented artists to spread joy and beauty, act as a catalyst for conversation and emotional catharsis should be good enough. But the data since 1992 is suggesting that is in fact not enough to garner the kind of investment that we need from government, from corporations, from lower level donors and ticket buyers to secure anything that looks like a healthy and sustainable future. I've suggested that it's not just that we need to change how we work within the field, but that we need help from outside of our field. Invite the arts into your big, thorny problem-solving leadership groups. Invite the arts into your economic and community development task forces. Invite the arts into your conversations about healthcare and healthcare access. Invite the arts into your roundtables about education and racial equity. And don't just bring an artist or an arts organization in at the end to do a thing. Invite them into the learning and the planning and the ideation, and be open to their way of thinking and their ideas. Our community's challenges are so complex right now and sometimes overwhelming. And what I keep hearing is that creativity and innovation are the orders of the day. Well, if that's the case, don't ignore the sector that has been sharpening those skills on a daily basis since the dawn of time. Can we reverse decades-long trends of declining attendees at traditional arts experiences? But if we swing big and we get out of our buildings and we listen deeply to our communities, maybe attendance at arts activities imagined in a million ways could take off like a rocket, and maybe that rocket could reignite interest in our traditional arts experiences. And can we change the narrative about who the arts are for and what the arts are good for? Yes, absolutely. But we need an invitation from our colleagues. We need you to make room at the table. We need you to trust us as professionals. And we need you to be open to collaborations to demonstrate that fact. Thank you.